with some students, I've been talking about how to approach once we find a story we like. So perhaps in this instance, for example's sake, we're looking at a Ray Bradbury story, The Veldt. And we're looking at that and we're saying, well, there are different things we can look at. We can look at Ray Bradbury. We could look at the story itself. We could start to ask some other questions. So in order to help you figure out some of those spaces, rather than feeling sort of stuck at author or story, look at where it is and a couple of details around it. So for instance, the Ray Bradbury story, it's in a section called The Future, an album, that starts with information about science fiction. It's, as you can see, just a page and a half, talking about, sort of what to expect with science fiction, where it comes from, a really, really short, succinct little section. And we also look at this when we talk about Nathaniel Hawthorne, because he's sort of writing proto-science fiction with The Birthmark, because we have a mad scientist and alchemy and that sort of thing. And then you'll see that we have some other stories. So it starts with a story, The Gernsback Continuum with William Gibson. And then, of course, we're going to find Ray Bradbury's work. And all of these stories are going to start with something about the author. So they're going to tell us just a little bit about their most famous works or when and where they lived, just some different details. Then you'll see that every story generally has some footnotes, and that too can be really helpful. So for instance, this one mentions J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. So we start to get some connections that we could possibly make. In this case, we are seeing mention of a particular story in the sense that the author is creating an illusion. He's letting us sort of think about a particular story. By giving us like a clue or two, we then have an entire other story flood our minds. And as you can see, not all of them are going to have a lot of footnotes, but they're here. And so again, here we have information about the story or about certain points. But we're going to flip to the last of it. And another element I want you to look for are the questions. So we may have just, one or two, but this one has 3. And those questions are going to help us sort of think about the broad spectrum of the story. Another thing that quite a few of our works have, obviously not all of them, but a handful, which is really, really nice, are sections called Authors on Their Work. And so this one is from an interview with Bradbury from 1976. As you can see with all of these ellipses and brackets, information has been removed. It's not the entire article. Mays, the editor, is going through and saying, what are the key aspects that I could give students so that, you're only reading a paragraph or two. Then we have additional science fiction ones. So we have Octavia Butler's Blood Child, a really, really, really great one. This is honestly one of my top favorites. It's just super interesting. I really like that one. And then let's see, we'll see if there's some more. So here's Jennifer Egan's The Black Box. And as you can tell, it's really, really different as well in terms of form. And the same things are happening. So when you find a story or an author you are interested in our book, some things to do are to look around it. What is it part of? Is it part of something sort of big like symbolism? Sorry, I'm trying to turn the page, and as you know, pages do not like to turn. Okay, so we also may find things like this at the very end of a section. Suggestions for writing. So it talks about, like in this case, we have 5 possible ideas about essays. So look around a story and sort of see what we could think about it. These aren't things that you have to do. You don't have to say, okay, well, that was the question. That person must know what I should write about. But instead, say, well, what does that make me think about? What sort of directions do I go because of that? Make the book work for you.